can you imagine, like, who could have sex with their friends chanting football songs? But I can't parallel park if my friends are in the back seat. Like, there's no way that I'd be, if they were kind of, do you know what I mean? You'll never walk alone.
Hey everybody, it's Zack Newmark here, and you're listening to Damn Yankee, the show that sits down with your favorite English-speaking entertainers as they pass through the Netherlands. Joining me today is British comedy powerhouse Russell Howard. Howard has been called one of the world's top comedians by the Sunday Times. After the global success of writing and starring in 182 episodes of the Russell Howard Hour on Sky and Russell Howard's Good News on the BBC, as well as 6 stand-up specials, his clips have generated 1 billion views on social media, and he's sold 2 million tickets for his shows worldwide. He'll be performing live at the Luxor Theatre in Rotterdam on February 19th, followed by 2 shows at the Carré in Amsterdam on the 20th and 21st. And his new special, live at the London Palladium, is available now on Drift. Here he is, joining us from Singapore in the middle of his world tour, Russell Howard, everybody. Russ, thank you so much for joining me, man. This is awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, Zach. So this is called the Damn Yankee.
It is. Damn being Amsterdam and Yankee being, well, about as northern of an American as you can get, and derided mercilessly by professors at the University of Texas when I used to study there.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
And you're touring all over the place right now, and you're joining us from Singapore. And before we get into some of your background, you got to tell me a little bit about what it's like being, in Singapore. You were in Hong Kong before that. I mean, what kind of audiences do you get for your show?
It was a mixture. There's lots of expats in places like Singapore and Hong Kong. So they feel slightly, but when you're in Europe, increasingly, it just feels like, whenever I gig in Amsterdam, it feels like Dutch people. If I'm gigging in Norway, it feels like Norwegians. So it's super exciting. See, I sometimes feel like expat community gigs, they just want a little bit of England. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And whereas if you're actually performing to people that live in those countries, they kind of, you can sort of play about with the local stuff. So that's kind of what been doing here. Like, I always find Amsterdam such a fascinating place because it's so one of my main memories is seeing so many people cycling and so many dogs in baskets and just with no seatbelts.
Yeah.
So your brain straight away think there must be so many dogs who kind of crash and fly through the air, and yet I've never seen that. But the look of fear in the eyes of a Dutch dog in a basket looks a lot like half of the American voting population at the moment. I think it's that kind of, what's going to happen? When's this going to end?
Oh, man.
When does this wild ride end?
So I moved here almost 20 years ago. When I moved here, I had this little half beagle, half Shih Tzu, looked like a little Jack Russell Terrier. And I saw exactly the same thing, and I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I stole a shopping basket from one of the supermarkets here, and I fixed it up with tie rips to the front of my bike, and I put my dog in it. And I think the first time that I tried riding around with her, she must have caught a scent of something because she tried leaping out of the basket, and I just had to grab her by the collar and desperately try to hold on to her while I'm flailing around on this bicycle. And pretty much after that was seatbelts or tying her down after that was the only way to go.
Fascinating.
Because they kind of they'll go all over the place, right?
Oh, amen. Yeah. Well, that's why, I used to have a Jack Russell, and there's absolutely no way I could have him in a basket. They're very, very yappy dogs.
Yeah.
And also, I'm sort of English. The idea of having a basket on my bike, I just haven't got the courage to sort of, because I'd be mocked mercilessly by, it's like if you wear a helmet, suddenly you just get kids all over England just slamming you. There's loads of kids that live around my way. And whenever I play five-a-side on Monday, you just hear these kids smoking weed. They're about 15, and they don't say mean things. They just point out the truth. So like one of my 40-year-old wobbly mates will get the ball, and you just hear these kids go, "Oh dear," like that. There's nothing you can do. You just have to sit there and listen to their sort of like very, very whispery heckles. So if I had a boss, they'd kill me.
I mean, is that what the British crowd is kind of like? It's very a sort of heckle by nature audience that you get at your shows.
Not really, no. But you're right. The sort of general population is we're very piss takey, and it's very kind of sort of very chatty. The chattiest crowds in the world, I would say, are the Irish. That's definitely, where you do 50% of your pre-prepared material, and then suddenly,
and then it's all crowd work after that.
Yeah, it kind of zigzags around, and I remember having a chat. I was talking about sex clubs, I think, and an Irish lady said that she'd been thrown out of a sex club, which is, for someone to volunteer that information in the middle of a gig is, it's pretty exciting.
Yes.
And I said, "Why were you thrown out?" And it was the most sort of Irish response. It was so poetic and yet so filthy. And she said, "There was a lady on stage having a go on herself with a dildo, and I felt inspired." Which was just a remarkable way. Do you know what I mean? It's so Irish. Like but that you know what I mean?
She didn't happen to be here at the time, was she?
I don't know where she was, but it's so inspired. It's so open to interpretation. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, the Dutch don't really have that sort of reputation. The Dutch, what I love about gigging in Holland is that they're always on Netherlands. I never know what I'm going to say, but they stare and they listen to me in one of the many languages that they speak, and they're just concentrating so much on the words. And then at the end, it feels like there's this collective moment where they sort of cheer and applause because they've got through it. Do you know what I mean? And they've managed to understand every word. It's amazing.
I saw at the theater where you're playing in Amsterdam a few months ago, I saw Bill Bailey there.
Right.
And he put on a great show. And it was a very strange vibe in the audience, because also you had exactly what you're talking about, this audience that was kind of very quiet, very much listening, would give a good laugh, from time to time. But a lot of the laughs, he was on stage. I felt like he thought he was dying on stage, right. But I absolutely don't think that he died on stage. I thought he put on a great set. He was terrific. And and then I compared that to maybe a year earlier, I saw Mark Maron at the same theater. And maybe Mark Maron drew only expats for his audience, or only Americans for his audience, because Maron killed. And, and I also kind of wonder, do you guys draw sort of different crowds depending on where, depending on where you're from? And, here, if you know who Mark Maron is, from his podcast, or him from Glow, his that wrestling show that was pretty successful for a few seasons. What do you find with your audience? Because you've got, you've been on TV forever, for like, you had your breakout about 22, 23 years ago. You were on TV soon after. And then you've got a couple of successful podcasts that you're doing also. So what's your audience like then?
I think I'm quite lucky, really, because I think it's through YouTube, Netflix, and I'm always doing stand-up. So I've not done other things. Do you know what I mean? I feel like Bill Bailey was in Strictly and was a really good dancer. So that must be a very strange audience to have. Do you know what I mean? That you suddenly have people, I really like the way he dances, and then suddenly he's playing the glockenspiel.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It must be bewildering.
Yeah, totally.
But nobody's seen me do anything other than stand-up. I think if people saw me dance, they absolutely wouldn't want to watch me do stand-up comedy, because I'm a terrible dancer. I dance like a newborn pony. I can't imagine I would entice people. So yeah, I guess that's it really. It's just,
I'm curious, are those your words, or are those your wife's words about dancing like a newborn pony?
Yeah, well, my wife's words are much harsher, to be honest. But yeah, our wedding dance, it was so like. Have you ever seen when a woman gets drunk and she kind of dances with her dog? It was sort of like that, really. It was just me, just desperately hanging on and singing along to the lyrics for some reason. It's just, and my wife was like, "Stop singing." I was like, just yeah, it was so awkward, man. But yeah, it's mostly just I guess stand-up clips from Instagram and whatnot. They haven't really seen me do anything else, so it's kind of all I've ever done.
Whether you've lived in the Netherlands for years or are getting ready to move here, the best time to learn the Dutch language is right now. Learning Dutch with the Delft method at Nedles is extremely effective because you start speaking the language from the very first day, actively putting the vocabulary you learn to good use. Nedles offers courses at all levels, both online and in person at their location here in Amsterdam. Their experienced teachers are specially trained in the Delft method, which combines studying a piece of text at home and then using words from the reading material in conversations during the next class. Students often say they feel supported at Nedles and praise the teachers for creating a safe space where they can overcome their fears of making mistakes. They also specialize in helping long-term immigrants, like me, tap into the passive knowledge they have about Dutch so they feel more comfortable speaking and writing in the language. Dutch classes begin at all levels on a rolling basis, so sign up today and save 10% with discount code PODCAST. Find out more at nedles.com, Nedles.com. That's Nedles, Dutch for internationals. I find your career really interesting right now because you've really had an enormous success with television, in my opinion.
Right.
The guesting on the panel shows as the start, and then 2 shows that were yours. All the travel documentaries you did with your mom, and now you've kind of decided to give it all up, is what I've heard. Are you just to focus more on the stand-up? Is that right?
Yeah, I just find it I find it so creatively rewarding, stand-up. There's no kind of committee. So if you have an idea, you can just go on stage and let the audience be the jury of the idea, and then you create with each other rather than, having executives or kind of lawyers or sort of channel bosses or whatever sort of saying what you can and can't do. And it'll probably change, but the state of topical comedy in the UK is pretty weird. Like we didn't have any satirical shows on during the last election, which is, can you imagine that happening in the US? There's a big Dutch topical show that I've been on before. The guy's name escapes me, but he's excellent.
You were here when you were here a few years ago. You were on Arjan Lubach. Is that who you mean?
That's the one.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Yeah,
that's what I mean. But it's so strange. So in the UK, we don't really have political comedy, and yet if you go on the internet, there's a lot of it.
Yeah,
and there's a lot going on, and people are interested, and particularly at the moment, it's so like trying to wade through, this sort of first month of the Trump administration, and there's so much it's just so interesting, and there's so much stand-up in it. The great thing about doing stand-up comedy is that you can see what Trump's doing with scientific research, and that they're scrutinizing and potentially banning certain scientific research if it's got 38 words in, and some of those words are disability, trauma, and women. And just finding that out is, to me, so insane that it just makes me want to write jokes about it. And rather than have to wait for somebody to go, right, in 3 weeks' time, you can write some jokes. Do you know what I mean?
And so I'm curious about that because, you're going to be, when you're here in Amsterdam or in Rotterdam first and then in Amsterdam, then you tour around Europe for about a week before you head off to the US. And the city you're going, I think 3, maybe 4 cities in Texas, including Austin, where I used to live at one point. And so I'm super curious. Are there jokes from, I watched your last special. You've got jokes about, like the anti-wokeness. You've got jokes about, people who are against inclusivity kind of in general. And you've got, your joke, you talk about cancel culture a little bit, I think. And here you're going to Texas, where, a very red state, and, very much voted along, kind of opposite for some of the things that you stand up for. And so I'm wondering, how do you build that into your set? How do you build that into your show?
Well, I think I would imagine that the people that will come and see me are, like I say, they've seen YouTube, they've seen Netflix. They kind of know what I'm about. So I'd be amazed if there was somebody who was really pro-Trump. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And kind of, I would be fascinated if that family were like, let's stop, picketing abortion clinics. Let's go watch some comedy. Like, I can't imagine that they're there, but I would never change my kind of stance on it, and I just think, I don't know, the great thing about stand-up is it's your opinion. And I think if you dig deep, I think it's like, to go back to my last example, right? If you're scrutinizing scientific papers because they've got, words like women in, and historically is another word, then that sort of means you can't have the past.
Right.
And that for me transcends whether you're kind of blue or red. Sort of, it shouldn't be a president's job to tamper with science. Like, the majesty of science is that it goes wherever you want, and you can figure out, like, we found penicillin through a mistake. Viagra was found through a mistake. There's all these kind of, the chainsaw was originally developed to help during childbirth. We don't do that anymore. Like, it's...
I can't tell if you're saying that's a good thing or a bad thing.
It's a fucking... Of course it's a good thing, but the point I'm making, it's that, like, I love digging deep into stuff and then trying to write jokes about it. And to me, that logic is... The logic of not interfering with science makes complete sense, So I wouldn't be afraid to say it in front of strangers.
So I'm kind of curious, because now you're touring. Is this the first time that you're touring with your wife, or has she toured with you before?
My wife has toured with me before. My son hasn't.
Yeah, because your son is just 8 months now.
That's right. He's 8 months old. Yeah, and he's beginning to roll and beginning to crawl, which is ideal for traveling in a bus across Europe and America. So it goes back to the Jack Russell in the basket, man. We're going to have to.
When my daughter was old enough to start walking, it was just before she turned 2. We were trying to get that last trip in where we get the ticket for free, because when they turn 2, then you pay the fare, right? And so my wife and I, we flew with my daughter, flew from here to Helsinki to Bangkok. And with my daughter just learning how to walk, it was like a 12-hour flight of just me chasing her all the way around that airplane nonstop, because she was also too young to sit down and watch anything or do anything for longer than 10 minutes. So it was just like 10 hours of running around the airplane. And then the plane touches down and she fell asleep.
Yes, of course she did. Of course she did. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Australians have got a thing called, I think it's Phenergan. It's some drug that they give their kids that just knocks them out, right? But something like 1 in 20 of the kids, it can have a different reaction, where it's basically like giving Coke to children. So it's just like, can you imagine that moment of just like, right, there you go, take your medicine. Oh, God. So it sounds like somebody might have slipped some Phenergan into your daughter, and she was in.
You've got me so curious, because, with the tour, with your kid, with your son at the age that he's at, are you writing while you're on tour? And how are you finding time to actually sit down and do that?
So I've been in my hotel room in Singapore on my own. So they didn't come to Singapore. So I've just been writing. Like, it's so bizarre, like trying to write about the Netherlands whilst you're in Singapore.
Right.
But that's what I'm doing. So, and then on tour, I kind of just have to find my moment. So if he's having a nap, there's 2 hours, just think, write, get on with it. And then when he wakes up, we'll look after him. But I think it sort of just adds to the process as well. Just, I'll see the country in a different way. Like last time I went to Amsterdam, I kind of, we went to different places I imagine we won't go with a kid. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to any cafes.
I mean, you've got a great bit about that in your special, which I swear is two of those things that you mentioned in your special. I feel like are things that were ripped out of my own experience moving here. And one of them's the drug dealer on the bridge in the red light district, and then the live porn theaters everywhere is
this is it
hysterical.
But it's also, that's what's so sort of fascinating about Amsterdam, that is because there's just a myriad of, it's either beautiful or erotic around every corner. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like the sort of red light district is just, I remember seeing a sign for kinky street food, and I was just like, I just can't, how'd you like your burger with a nipple clamp? Like, and there was a shop that was selling luxury bondage gear,
I mean, you don't want to cheap out on bondage gear, right?
Well, I don't know, but I thought diamonds were a girl's best friend, not a pervert's. But I just can't, surely diamonds are about display. So I just can't imagine a group of, Dutch people looking around as their mate is getting, paddled with a diamond whip and looking at him going, someone's doing all right for himself. Do you know what I mean? It baffled me. I didn't have the courage to go in and see, and also surely call it Pimp My Gimp. Don't call it luxury bondage gear. Have the courage to give it a proper name. But I really like, I love how many different Amsterdams there are. That's what I love about it. It's probably the same as most places.
Definitely. I mean, the city's so much more than kind of the stereotype that it has. But at the same time, for like 7 years, I had my office was in the red light district. And, you see sort of English football teams or English bachelor parties where one guy goes into one of the windows in the red light district, and then his mates are all chanting their football songs outside of the window, waiting for him to come out. And it's this almost insanity down there. And then you step,
it's insane.
100 meters outside, and it's totally different out in the, on the side streets. Yeah.
Yeah. And suddenly we've got a Rembrandt museum.
Right.
And, but also, can you imagine like who could have sex with their friends chanting football songs? But I can't parallel park if my friends are in the back seat. Like there's no way that I'd be, if they were kind of, do you know what I mean? You'll never walk alone.
Right.
Well, Jesus Christ. But again, I like playing with that tension whenever you're in Amsterdam, because I can sense the audience going, listen, we aren't just this. Okay.
Right.
But that's what makes it so remarkable. I love it.
And then how are you, how do you find Rotterdam? Have you played in Rotterdam before?
Yeah, we did it last time. But we were quite in and out. So hopefully get a bit more time there this time. Have you been to, I presume you must have done.
Oh, sure. I mean, everything here is, within an hour or, it's 45 minutes on a fast train to get to Rotterdam, or an hour on a fast train.
What would you recommend? What should someone do while they're in Rotterdam?
Other than the sights, walking around Rotterdam it's a very different vibe and a very different city. I mean, almost the entirety of the city was destroyed in World War II. And so, so much of what's there now is, built in, the last 7 decades or so, and how it's developed there is very different from other cities, in the Netherlands. And, there's a sort of, forced rivalry between Amsterdam and Rotterdam, but I think it's a lovely city. My friends who end up moving there or living there, but I totally understand why they live there, because I like the vibe there and it's just a nice place. So definitely. But I was curious because also you're talking about checking it out a little bit more. But would you say you were sort of one of those comedians who goes out after shows, or are you one of those comedians who goes home after shows?
Well, it'll be slightly different this time because we'll be on the bus, but I'll definitely be. I definitely go out. Whenever I'm in a place, I like going to coffee shops. I kind of like going to bars. I like talking with the locals. I kind of find that even if it's just the promoter or my support act, or just people. It's so great to be able to people watch and just have a good kind of wander around. You kind of get a feel for it. So yeah, I'm definitely not a guy who holds up in the hotel.
Americans, you still have one last chance to collect the extra $1,400 the U.S. government owes you from round 3 of the stimulus package if you are behind on your taxes. The experts at My Expat Taxes can guide you through the process, just like they helped me. And if you haven't filed taxes in the U.S. in a while, or ever, My Expat Taxes will quickly and easily bring you up to date with the IRS. That way you can still collect that stimulus check, but only if you sign up and file by June 16th. For me, even after living abroad for 17 years, American tax bureaucracy felt like a Kafka-esque nightmare, but not anymore. My Expat Taxes gives me a real sense of relief with their easy-to-use, up-to-date software, maximizing tax benefits like the foreign earned income exclusion, and they even file my foreign bank account reporting at no extra charge. They are secure and reliable with a commitment to data privacy and confidentiality. So whether you're catching up or simply filing your return on time, let the experts at My Expat Taxes wipe away your tax anxiety. And use discount code DAMYANKEE to get 10% off your purchase. That's DAMYANKEE, DAMYANKEE, at myexpattaxes.com. Your life just got a whole lot easier. I have to ask you about this because the rumor that I've heard or things that we've seen before is something about the chocolate milk gang. Have you heard of this? Do you have any idea what this is? The chocolate milk gang?
Oh, right. Yeah.
So apparently, it's you and John Oliver and
yes,
4 or 5 other comedians. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Well, when we were young, like I think when I was, I started doing stand-up when I was 18 and I looked about 11. So sort of the idea of like going to bars after gigs, it was just an absolute minefield because it was just, I used to get ID'd before shows all the time. And that really just gets rid of any kind of pre-gig swagger. Do you know what I mean? It's you just trying to find your ID. So yeah, we just kind of, we would do gigs and then just kind of go and hang out in like coffee shops more than kind of, bars.
Do you know, where did that term come from, the chocolate milk gang? Because John Oliver said he had never heard of it before until it was brought up on a podcast like 3 months ago.
Yeah, well, Jason Byrne, the Irish comedian, went, it's the fucking chocolate milk brigade. And implying that instead of having beers, we'd have milkshakes. And it just stuck. I don't know why. It was just this weird... yeah, I mean, to be honest, as far as nicknames go, it's not the worst. But yeah, but now I'm an old man. I like a glass of wine. I like a beer. I still like a chocolate milkshake. And whenever I slurp one, I'm kind of reminded of the innocence of my youth. But it's so weird. It's this. Me and John have an odd connection through milkshakes. Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
Are you going to see him or anybody else? Because is New York on your tour when you're in the States?
Yeah, we're doing that next year at some stage. Yeah. I'll kind of the US. It's just the West Coast. So yeah, we'll be doing the East in I forget when, but yeah, I normally hang out with John. It's so much fun because he's such an old friend of mine. And then whenever I'm there, I try and catch one of his shows. And I can't tell you how cool it is just to see your mate like smashing a great big American TV show and just all these Americans super excited to see John. When, me and John have done many gigs together down the years and that was not always the response. Do you know what I mean? So it's pretty cool.
Was it Oliver who said, I think he was at Fringe or in Montreal, one or the other maybe. And he played a gig that there were like 2 people in the
Oh
audience
yeah,
or something
yeah,
like that. And then they
yeah,
started, and then they walked out or something. And he had to
yeah.
decide
Which,
whether or
but
not to keep going. That was him, I think, right?
yeah, John had many walkouts. Yeah, but he was always trying something. He was always he was in a state of permanent evolution. But as a consequence of that, some people just but he would doggedly stick to it. And I remember him telling me that story that basically he did the show, 2 people in. After about 20 minutes, one person left. 10 minutes later, the other person bailed.
Right.
And he sort of looked at the sound guy and was like, "Shall I carry on?" And apparently the sound guy just went like that. And it was just that moment of going, "Oh, well,
I got to know what's your biggest bomb then?
wowzers." The strangest bomb I ever had, I was doing a Christmas show in Essex and a lady threw a sex toy at me. And it hit me in the face. And that was pretty demoralizing.
Yes.
But also, like, that woman had very little faith in the evening. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just like, got my wallet, got the keys, nearly forgot my dildo. So that was what was strange is I was the opening act and the headliner left the stage early. I carried on, but the headliner left the stage because somebody hit him with a sausage roll. And the owner of the club was like, that was pathetic. Somebody hit you with a dildo and you carried on. A sausage roll was all it took to bring him down. And I didn't want to sort of point out that I really needed the money. And
Right.
they could have thrown anything at me. But yeah, that was probably the strangest. But in terms of bombing, it's kind of that thing of, it's just part of the process when you're young. And sometimes when you're older as well, you just got to work ideas out and go to a small room, a dark room, and just see what sticks.
Yeah, because that was something that you were in the news for not too long ago. I think during COVID was when you were going back out and you walked off stage because somebody was filming your set, something like that. And I mean, do you still feel so strongly about such things now about...
Not really. That what made that particular gig unique is that I was doing it as a favor of a friend of mine's. There was like, honestly, 20 people there, and she just kind of had her camera like in my face, and I was just going, oh, "Come on, can you not do that?" And she basically sort of said, "It's my right, just perform." And I did not react well to that. So it was more the kind of, "Come on, dance for me." And I was just like, I cannot dance for you. And was just fucked off. And I had a load of ideas, and it was COVID, and they're on my notes. And it was the whole, you need dark rooms where you can figure things out. But if she records it, it becomes tangible in the truth. And some of those things I may not believe in an hour's time, but I just needed to figure out, it was just. And I was trying to be reasonable, and she was just going, "Come on, get on with it." And bit of red mist.
Yeah, how do you deal with that now? How do you test out new material? Because obviously,
well, I go to a club called Top Secret Comedy in London, which is amazing, and loads of kind of comics go, and the audience are brilliant, and they don't record it, and you just kind of figure it out, and they're really cool crowds, so they're not like easily sort of offended. They're not easily riled up. So it's just this perfect, dingy little sticky floor gig where people pay like £3 to get in. It's amazing. And then you just go there with a load of notes and kind of stand there and see what works. It's the most fun, honestly. It's so much fun because you generally have no idea how it's going to go. It's great.
You've got your recent special that you just put out. I want to say 3 months ago. Was that live at the London Palladium? Right?
Yeah.
How do people get to watch that? So where do people go to watch that?
Thank you so much for the ability to plug. You can stream it from my website. It's russell/howard.co.uk.
And that's also where all of your tour dates are.
That's what. Oh my God! Look at you. That's
I'm right. I'm here for you, man.
All the tour dates, yeah, we're doing, we've got 8 gigs in Europe, starting next, I don't know when this is going out, but starting Wednesday the 11th, I believe. Is that? No, that's not it.
You'll be in your Singapore Tuesday the 11th.
That's right.
And then the following week, you'll hit Rotterdam and then Amsterdam. Right. And off the top of my head, Paris, a city in Slovenia or Slovakia, which I can't pronounce, and I'm not going to try to right now, and Austria and Vienna before you head off to America, right?
That's correct. My God, you should be my PR man. You know the lot.
Oh my God, your PR team, I'm going to tell you, your PR team's amazing, by the way. So
yeah, they're great.
Give them some thanks after this.
I absolutely will, yeah. Chloe and Vicky, fantastic.
But you're coming here. I'm just curious how your audience for these shows that are coming up, is that going to be a lot of new material compared to what's on that special?
Yeah, it's completely new. So
completely new.
Yeah, so it's a completely different show. So yeah, I've been kind of like writing a show underneath that special. So yeah, it's brand new.
That's how do you manage to record 1 hour and write another hour in the same year? It's
well, because you have to really like stand up, and it's very handy if you have an 8-month-old son, because yeah, lots of things happen. I'll be honest with you, an 8-month-old son and Trump becoming president has really helped me. Do you know what I mean? It's that thing.
A gold mine for comedians, maybe questionable for some people out there. Yeah.
But yeah, 2 very different babies. So they've both been very useful to me.
And I before I let you go, I got to tell you, the club that you're playing in Austin is called Emo's, which is actually a moved club. It used to be in the city center. Emo's is home to the old Emo's, is the weirdest punk rock show that I ever went to in my entire life. It was in, I think, 1999, 98. I saw the Dwarves play there. It's a band known for getting into fights with security, cops, their crowd, their audience. I think the entirety of the show lasted 10 minutes before the lead singer started throwing beer bottles against the brick wall of the place, smashing up everywhere. Then the fight broke out. Someone smashed into the drum kit, and they said thank you and good night, and we're off the stage in about 10, 12 minutes.
What I love about that story is that there was clear, insane violence, and then they went, thank you, good night. There's something magnificent about that. Do you know what I mean? Imagine like smashing a bottle and then go, anyway, we've been the Dwarfs. We'll see you next time. There's something really, do they still do the Beatles bow?
Right.
At the end? Exactly. It's fucking mad. Yeah, those gigs, man. That's like, but those little sort of sweaty rooms sometimes, you just, like, I've been the same with stand-up. I've seen one of my favorite insane gigs. There's a gig called Leighton Live in Edinburgh that starts at 1 a.m. And for 3 years when I was young, I used to host it because I was quite good off the cuff. So I would just, they'd host. So, but I was like, I don't know, 24 to 27, I did it. And one night, it's a memory that really sticks in my head. All the comics were getting just booed off stage. And there was a guy that came on. He lasted about 30 seconds. And I walked out and I said, well, I can't believe you got rid of him after 30 seconds, because he was going to end his act. And it's true, because I've seen him before, by putting a lit firework up his arse and singing "There's No Business Like Show Business." And the Scottish man shouted out, why didn't he start with it? And you're like, where do you go if you open like that? And then the whole act became this, he kind of got him back out, he kind of did it, but it had that kind of, those nights when there's a real air of kind of just madness in the air, they're always the best gigs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I guess if you're struggling for new material for your Rotterdam or Amsterdam set, give us a call. We can hook you up with some firecrackers, I'm sure.
Yeah, hopefully it won't come to that. Jesus. Yeah, imagine that. That'd be so good to anyone who comes to the show having listened to this. They'll know when I'm struggling. If I just fucking light it The music kicks in. There's no...
If the bottle rockets come out, yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
All right, so give me the website one more time.
It is www.russell/howard.co.uk.
All right, Russell Howard in Singapore, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your tour, starting with Rotterdam and on the way through Amsterdam and the rest of Europe, and then in the United States. And check out his special. It is hilarious. Russell, I really, really appreciate you taking the time for joining us. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, and good luck with your set in Singapore tomorrow.
Thanks, sir. See you later.
All right, thanks, Russell. Bye-bye. Damn Yankee is produced in partnership with NL Times, the top choice for English language news from the Netherlands. Founded nearly 15 years ago, NL Times grew to become the #1 site for information about this country, featuring more news stories every day of the week than any other website. Keep tabs on the latest top stories and breaking news from across the entire country, not only in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague. Find out more at nltimes.nl. Damn Yankee is presented by NL Times, and the podcast was created by me, Zack Newmark, along with the very talented Rizzo, who produced this episode.